The transport ship moved silently through the vast sea of stars. Inside, the long rows of seats were almost filled with passengers from many different worlds. Some looked human, some had small changes in their skin or eyes, while others were clearly alien. Everyone carried the restless energy of travelers heading toward the central station, the heart of trade and connection in this sector of space. Near the back of the ship sat a woman who stood out more than anyone else. Her name was Rila. She was tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered faintly under the cabin lights, covered in thin glowing lines that moved like rivers across her arms and neck. Her eyes were silver, reflecting light like polished metal. She wore a plain traveler's cloak, but nothing could hide her alien appearance. Around her, the seats were strangely empty. Passengers avoided sitting near her, even though the ship was crowded. Every other row was tied with people shifting, stretching, and complaining about lack of space, yet the two seats beside Rila remained untouched. Whispers moved through the cabin. A pair of human merchants leaned toward each other and spoke in low voices. "Why is she here?" one asked. "Keep your voice down. Don't look at her. You know what her kind did in the war," the other replied. A small group of travelers from another species gave her long stares, then quickly looked away when she turned her head. Parents pulled their children closer when they passed by her row. Rila kept her eyes on her hands, folded neatly in her lap. She made no protest, no attempt to speak. She had seen these reactions many times before. To Rila, the silence around her was heavier than the ship's metal walls. She thought about her home world, scarred by battles fought years ago. The war was over, but the memory of it followed her everywhere. Her people were known as fighters, survivors of harsh struggles. Other species remembered the stories, the firestorms, the desperate battles where her kind refused to fall. They did not see her as a traveler searching for peace. They saw only the shadow of that past. Still, she sat calmly, breathing slowly. She told herself she could endure it. It was only a journey. Soon she would step off this ship, and the whispers would fade into the background of another busy station. She had learned to live with this distance. But not everyone on the ship looked at her with fear. A young human named Aaron stood near the aisle, holding his small travel bag in one hand. He had boarded late, so most of the seats were already taken. He looked down the rows, searching for a place to sit. Every seat seemed full, every traveler packed close to their neighbors. Except for one row. He noticed the empty space near the alien woman. Aaron paused. He could feel the quiet tension in the cabin. He saw the way people shifted uncomfortably when they glanced in her direction. He understood the reason, even if he did not share it. His family had told him stories about her people as well. Yet something about the scene troubled him. A ship filled with living beings, all pressed shoulder to shoulder, yet no one was willing to share a seat with one woman. He stepped into the row. A few passengers frowned, some whispering under their breath. Aaron ignored them. He walked slowly until he reached the empty seat beside Rila. She lifted her eyes, startled for a moment. "Is this seat free?" he asked gently. Her voice was soft when she replied. "Yes. It is free." Aaron sat down without hesitation. He placed his bag under the seat and leaned back, as though nothing unusual had happened. The passengers nearby shifted again, clearly surprised by his choice. Some looked away quickly, unwilling to watch. Others shook their heads, muttering. But Aaron did not notice. He gave Rila a small smile, not forced, simply natural. For a moment, Rila said nothing. She had not expected anyone to sit beside her, let alone a human. She studied him from the corner of her eye. His clothing was simple, his expression calm. He did not look afraid. That was what surprised her most. "Thank you," she whispered after a long pause. Aaron turned his head. "For what? For not avoiding me," she said quietly. "Everyone else does." Aaron shrugged, as if the answer were simple. "A seat is a seat. And you seem fine to me." Her silver eyes softened. She had heard many words in her life, most of them filled with judgment. These plain words carried more weight than she expected. The ship continued its steady journey, engines humming through the floor. Around them, conversations rose and fell, but the air near their row felt different now. The silence was no longer cold. Rilla wanted to say more, but she hesitated. She had spent years keeping her voice hidden, her thoughts locked inside. Trust did not come easily. Yet something in Aaron's quiet presence felt safe, as though he truly saw her as more than a shadow of history. Aaron rested his head back against the seat, eyes half closed, calm in the steady rhythm of travel. Rilla turned to the window, watching stars stretch into lines as the ship passed through faster than light travel lanes. She allowed herself to breathe a little easier, her shoulders less tense. For the first time on a long journey, she was not entirely alone. The hum of the engines grew louder as the ship prepared to cross into a new sector. A voice echoed over the speakers, announcing the next checkpoint. Passengers shifted again, some stretching, some checking their bags. The crew moved through the aisles, making sure everyone was secured. Aaron opened his eyes and glanced at Rilla. She still watched the stars, her silver gaze lost in thought. He wanted to ask her about her home, about who she was beyond the whispers, but he did not push. He simply sat beside her, giving her the space to choose. She noticed. And in that small moment, something began to change. The journey had only just started, but already the quiet decision of one human had altered the weight of silence around an alien woman who carried the burden of her people's past. The ship continued its steady path through the stars. The passengers spoke in low voices, and the sound of the engines filled every pause. The rows were packed with people from different worlds, and yet one row stood apart. Rilla sat near the window, her silver eyes fixed on the passing streaks of light. Beside her sat Aaron, calm and steady, while the space around them still carried an uneasy silence. The other passengers had not stopped watching. They tried to be discreet, but their eyes always returned to that row. Some could not understand why a human would choose to sit beside her. A few muttered to each other, shaking their heads. Others leaned closer, whispering stories of what they thought they knew about Rilla's kind. But Aaron did not care about the whispers. He had made his choice. He sat back in his seat, his bag tucked under his feet, and turned to look at Rilla. She kept her face toward the window, though he could see the faint tension in her hands, fingers pressed tightly together in her lap. He thought she looked tired, not dangerous. "You travel often?" he asked, his voice calm. Her eyes flicked toward him for a moment, then back to the window. "Not often. Only when I must." Aaron nodded. "I do not travel much either. This is my first time heading to the central station." That caught her attention. Slowly, she turned to study him. "Your first time, yes," he said with a small smile. "I grew up on a small colony. I never left it until now. Everything out here feels so large. The stars, the stations, the people. It is all new to me." There was a pause. Then, to his surprise, she asked, Why are you traveling now? Aaron thought for a moment before answering. I want to find work. My colony has little opportunity. I want to see more of the galaxy, maybe learn something useful, maybe make a difference. And you, why are you traveling? Her lips pressed together. She hesitated, clearly weighing whether she should answer. Finally, she spoke in a quiet voice. I seek a place where I am not treated as an enemy. That is all. Aaron did not respond with pity or fear. He simply nodded, as though her answer made sense. That sounds fair. Rilla tilted her head slightly. She had expected judgment or more questions, but his calm acceptance caught her off guard. For a moment, she almost smiled. The ship lights dimmed as it passed into a quieter travel lane. The stars outside shifted from long streaks to steady points again, a sign that they were moving between gates. The voice of the crew announced that the ship would soon make a short stop at an orbital checkpoint. Passengers prepared by adjusting their bags, fastening their belts, and whispering about the inspection to come. Rilla leaned back in her seat, her gaze turning distant. Inspections always made her uneasy. Too many times she had been pulled aside, questioned longer than others, treated as though she carried danger with her presence. She tightened her cloak around her shoulders, bracing herself. Aaron noticed her change in posture. You do not like inspections, they never end well for me, she replied softly. Aaron understood without needing the details. He could already see how others looked at her, how they kept their distance. He imagined what officials might do, and his jaw tightened. Then I will stay near you, he said simply. Her silver eyes widened just a little. Why? Because it is the right thing, he said. Rilla did not answer, but she studied him carefully. In her heart, she could not remember the last time someone had said such a thing without hesitation. The ship slowed, its engines lowering to a deep hum. Outside, lights of the orbital checkpoint came into view, shining like a net across the black sky. The vessel docked with a faint vibration. The doors opened, and officers in neat uniforms stepped inside. Their boots rang against the floor as they moved down the aisle, checking tickets and IDs, scanning passengers with handheld devices. The cabin grew quiet. Even the whispers stopped. Everyone sat straight, waiting for their turn. When the officers reached Rilla's row, they paused. The leading officer, a tall human man with sharp eyes, frowned slightly when he saw her. You. Stand up. Rilla obeyed without protest. She had learned long ago that resistance only made things worse. She stood, her cloak falling loosely around her, her silver eyes calm though her hands tightened at her sides. The officer scanned her ID card and frowned deeper. Your people are flagged for additional checks. You will come with us. Before Rilla could move, Aaron spoke. She has a right to travel like anyone else. She has done nothing wrong. The officer turned to him, his expression cold. This is not your concern, traveler. Sit down. Aaron stayed seated but met the officer's gaze. I will sit, but I will not look away. She deserves fairness. Rilla glanced at him, surprise flickering in her eyes. She had not expected him to speak for her. The officer's eyes narrowed. He studied Aaron for a moment longer, then finally gestured to his team. Proceed with the scan. The officers scanned her belongings and her cloak. The device beeped softly, showing nothing unusual. One of the officers looked uncertain. The leader muttered something under his breath but gave a short nod. Clear. Sit back down. Rilla sat again, her movements calm, though inside her chest her heart beat quickly. She had expected another long delay, perhaps even to be pulled off the ship for questioning. Instead, for the first time in many journeys, the inspection ended quickly. She knew why. It was because Aaron had spoken. His voice had not changed the officer's rule, but it had changed the way the moment felt. When the officers moved on, Aaron leaned back in his seat. He did not look at her, did not make a show of what he had done. To him, it was natural. To her, it was something rare. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave her the same calm smile. "A seat is a seat. A traveler is a traveler." The ship undocked from the checkpoint and resumed its journey. The engines hummed again, steady and strong. The passengers began to relax, but a new mood had settled over the row where Rila and Aaron sat. Some nearby travelers had noticed what had happened. They no longer whispered as loudly, and some even looked away with faint unease. Aaron did not mind. Rila did not either. The rest of the journey passed in quiet conversation. Aaron asked her about the stars she had seen, the places she had visited. She spoke slowly, sharing small details, each word chosen carefully. She told him about the rivers of her home world, glowing with the same light that flowed through her skin. She told him about nights under skies filled with 3 moons, and about the silence after the war. Aaron listened with patience, never rushing her, never interrupting. Rila found herself speaking more than she expected. The words felt lighter when he listened. For once, she was not only an outcast. She was a person telling her story. And in that simple act of listening, Aaron had already begun to change more than just one journey. The ship moved quietly through the star lanes, its engines steady like a heartbeat. The hum of travel filled the cabin, and passengers sank back into their seats. Some whispered softly to one another, while others closed their eyes and rested. In the middle of this, Aaron and Rila sat side by side. The moment at the checkpoint still hung in Rila's thoughts. She had expected the officers to pull her aside as usual, to treat her like she carried danger simply because of who she was. But it had not happened this time. Aaron had spoken. His words had been simple, but they had cut through the cold air of suspicion. Rila kept turning them over in her mind. Aaron, however, acted as if nothing unusual had happened. He leaned back with his arms folded, calm and relaxed. He seemed content just to watch the passing lights through the small window. When he noticed Rila looking at him, he gave a small nod, as though telling her everything was fine. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her instincts told her to remain quiet, to protect herself from the sting of judgment. But another part of her whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was someone she could trust. "You are not afraid of me," she said at last. Aaron glanced at her, puzzled. "Why should I be? My people," Rila answered softly. "You know what others say about us." "Yes," Aaron said. He shrugged lightly. "I heard the stories. But stories are not the same as seeing someone with your own eyes. You do not seem like the monster they describe." The words touched her more than she expected. "You think so simply," she whispered. "Sometimes simple is enough," he replied. There was a pause, filled only by the steady hum of the ship. Then Aaron asked, "What happened to your people? Why does everyone look at you with fear?" Rila's silver eyes lowered. She had carried this weight for years, never sharing it with strangers. Yet his question was not sharp or demanding. It was gentle, curious, patient. For the first time, she felt the urge to speak. "The war," she began slowly. "It changed everything. My people fought hard. We were pushed into battles we never asked for. Our worlds were attacked, our cities burned. We defended ourselves. We fought back with everything we had. And because of that, we were given a name that has never left us. Fierce. Dangerous. Ruthless. That is how others see us. Aaron listened without interrupting. His face showed no fear, only quiet attention. Rila continued, her voice soft but steady. I was young when the war began. Too young to fight. But old enough to see the destruction. I watched our skies burn. I heard the cries of my people. We did not choose that war, but we paid its price. When it ended, no one remembered the cause. They remembered only the fear. And so wherever I travel, the fear follows me. She stopped, her breath heavy with the weight of her own words. She had never told her story so plainly to anyone outside her people. It felt like opening a wound. Aaron leaned forward slightly. That sounds like survival, not ruthlessness. You defended what was yours. Her eyes lifted toward him. Do you truly believe that? Yes, he said without hesitation. If my home had been attacked, I would have done the same. Anyone would. Fear makes people blind. They see only the battle, not the reason behind it. Rila's chest tightened. His words were simple, yet they eased something inside her that had been locked away for years. She had grown used to silence, used to the stares, used to being treated as a shadow of war. But here was someone who looked past all of it. You are strange, she murmured. Aaron chuckled softly. I have heard that before. For the first time since the journey began, Rila allowed herself a faint smile. It was small, almost hidden, but it was real. The passengers nearby noticed the quiet conversation between them. Some frowned, uneasy at the sight of a human speaking so freely with her. Others pretended not to look, though their eyes slid toward the row again and again. But Rila ignored them. Aaron did too. The ship moved on through the lanes of space. Time stretched, and the hum of the engines became like a rhythm to their voices. Rila spoke of her world in pieces, as though testing how much she could share. She told him about the glowing rivers of her homeland, rivers that pulsed with light under the moons. She told him about forests that whispered when the wind passed through their tall crystal trees. She even described the songs her people sang at night, songs that carried through the valleys like echoes of light. Aaron listened with wonder. He had grown up on a plain colony world, where the skies were wide but the land was dry and simple. He had never imagined rivers that glowed, or trees that shone like crystal. Her words painted pictures in his mind, and he wished he could see them with his own eyes. Your world sounds beautiful, he said. It was, she answered. Her voice lowered with sorrow. Much of it is gone now. The war burned many forests. The rivers still glow, but their light reflects only silence. I do not know if it will ever be as it was. Aaron looked at her, seeing the grief behind her silver eyes. Maybe one day it will heal. Worlds have a way of finding life again. She held his gaze for a long moment, searching his face. At last she gave a quiet nod. Perhaps. The ship's lights shifted again, marking the passage into another sector. The voice of the crew filled the cabin, announcing the next stretch of travel. Passengers stirred, some stretching, some preparing meals from their travel packs. The mood slowly relaxed, though the shadow of the earlier inspection still lingered. A child sitting a few rows ahead turned and looked back at Rila. The child's wide eyes were filled with curiosity, not fear. For a moment, the child smiled. Rila, caught off guard, lifted her hand in a small wave. The child grinned and turned back around. Aaron noticed. See, not everyone fears you. Rila's lips curved into another small smile. Children see differently. They do not carry the same memories as their elders. Maybe that is why they see more clearly, Aaron said. Rila considered his words, then nodded slowly. The journey stretched on, filled with soft conversation, shared silences, and the growing sense of connection. Rila spoke more than she ever thought she would, and Aaron listened with the kind of patience that felt rare. She began to understand that perhaps not all humans carried suspicion in their hearts. Perhaps some could see her for who she truly was. As the ship prepared to cross into the final travel lane before the central station, Rila leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes for a moment. For the first time in many years, the weight on her chest felt lighter. And Aaron, sitting quietly beside her, felt something as well. He had set out from his colony to find work and opportunity, but now he wondered if he had found something even more important. In the vast silence of space, two travelers had begun to share a story that neither of them had expected. The journey had been calm for many hours. The passengers had grown used to the steady rhythm of the engines, the soft glow of the cabin lights, and the endless stars outside the windows. Some slept, others spoke in whispers, and a few kept their eyes closed, lost in thought. Rila sat beside Aaron, her silver eyes calm but watchful. She had told him more about her past than she had ever shared with a stranger before, and strangely, she did not regret it. Aaron's presence made the silence feel less heavy. He treated her as a traveler, nothing more, nothing less. For that, she was grateful. But peace does not always last. Without warning, the ship shook violently. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the cabin. Passengers gasped in fear, clutching their seats. Some cried out, others scrambled for their bags, though the crew shouted for everyone to remain calm. "What is happening?" Aaron asked, his eyes scanning the cabin. One of the crew rushed past, speaking quickly into a comm device. "Hull breach detected near the rear section. Emergency doors are closing." The words sent a wave of panic through the passengers. A hull breach meant death if it spread. Space did not forgive weakness in a ship's walls. The cabin filled with shouts and cries as parents pulled children close and travelers braced themselves for the worst. Rila's sharp senses caught the faint hiss of air pressure dropping in the distance. She turned her head and saw a flashing light at the far end of the aisle, where one of the emergency doors was trying to seal. The mechanism sparked, jammed halfway. Aaron followed her gaze. The door had not sealed completely, leaving a narrow gap where the air shimmered unnaturally. A young child had been separated from her family, trapped on the wrong side of the malfunctioning door. The little girl pounded on the glass panel, tears streaming down her face as the thin gap whistled with escaping air. The crew tried to override the controls, but the system failed again. One officer shouted, "The pressure will drop. We cannot open it without sealing the breach. We will lose her if we wait too long." Rila's body tensed. She could hear the rising fear in the passengers, the helplessness in the crew. The child's cries cut through the chaos like a blade. Without thinking, she stood. Aaron grabbed her arm. "Rila, what are you doing?" Her silver eyes met his. "I can help." Before he could stop her, she moved swiftly down the aisle. Passengers gasped as she passed, some pulling back in fear, others staring in shock. She ignored them all. The officers at the broken door raised their hands. "Stay back, it is not safe." But Rila did not stop. She pulled off her cloak, revealing the faint glowing patterns running across her arms and neck. The lines pulsed brighter as she pressed her hands against the sparking frame of the door. Her people were known as survivors for a reason. Their bodies were stronger than most, adapted to endure pressure and damage that would harm others. Where the crew could not hold the door against the strain, Rila could. She braced her hands against the edge, forcing the metal to shift. The glowing lines across her skin flared as she drew on every bit of her strength. The door groaned, sparks flying, but slowly the gap began to close. The whistling of escaping air softened. Quickly, Rila said through clenched teeth. "Get the child." The crew hesitated for only a moment before one officer reached through the small gap and pulled the terrified girl to safety. The child clung to the officer's chest, crying in relief. The parents rushed forward, tears streaming as they took their daughter into their arms. But the door still resisted fully closing. The pressure continued to strain against the weak seal. Rila's muscles trembled, her glowing veins burning bright as she held the frame together. Aaron ran to her side. "What can I do?" She shook her head. "Stay back. The pressure is too strong." "I will not leave you alone," Aaron said firmly. He braced himself against the frame beside her, adding his strength to hers. His body shook with the force, far weaker than hers, but his presence steadied her. Together they forced the door shut. With a final groan, the mechanism locked into place. The alarm near the door turned green. The breach was sealed. The cabin fell silent. Everyone stared at Rila. The alien woman they had feared, the one they had refused to sit beside, had just saved them all from disaster. She had saved the child. She had risked herself without hesitation. Rila slowly stepped back, her breath heavy, her glowing veins fading to their usual faint shimmer. Aaron stood beside her, sweat on his brow but determination in his eyes. The child's parents came forward, bowing their heads. "Thank you," they said, their voices shaking with emotion. "Thank you for saving our daughter." Rila gave a small nod. "She is safe. That is what matters." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the mood in the cabin shifted. Whispers spread, but they were different now. Not whispers of fear, but whispers of awe. Passengers who had pulled away from her now looked with wide eyes, not knowing what to say. Some even began to clap softly, and soon the sound grew until the cabin echoed with applause. Rila stood still, uncertain how to react. She had not acted for praise. She had acted because a child had been in danger. Yet she could feel the change in the air. The walls of fear had cracked. Aaron stepped forward and raised his voice. "She saved us. Remember that. The one you avoided, the one you feared, she is the reason we are alive right now." The passengers nodded, some lowering their eyes in shame. Others gave small bows of respect. The crew captain approached Rila and placed a hand over his heart. "On behalf of the crew, thank you. Without you, we would have lost lives today." Rila bowed her head slightly. "I only did what I could." When she returned to her seat, Aaron sat beside her once more. She looked at him, her voice low. "You stood with me." He smiled faintly. "Of course. I said I would not leave you." Her silver eyes softened, filled with a warmth she had not felt in years. The rest of the journey continued, but the atmosphere on the ship was different now. Passengers who once kept their distance now glanced at her with respect. Some offered small smiles. Others shifted, as if ready to sit nearer if they had the chance. Rila remained calm, but inside she felt something stir. For the first time since leaving her world, she did not feel entirely alone. Erin's quiet choice had begun the change, but her actions had sealed it. And as the ship neared the central station, Rilla realized that this journey was not just about reaching a destination. It was about proving, both to herself and to others, that the past did not have to decide the future. The transport ship glided smoothly through the last stretch of space before reaching the central station. The stars shimmered outside like countless scattered jewels. Inside, the atmosphere of tension that had dominated earlier had transformed. Passengers whispered, but this time the whispers carried curiosity, respect, and admiration. Many glanced toward Rilla, the alien woman who had once been avoided by all. Rilla sat quietly in her seat beside Erin, her silver eyes watching the soft glow of the cabin lights. She felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Her body still tingled from the effort she had made to seal the hull breach. Her glowing patterns had dimmed, leaving only faint traces of light across her arms, but the memory of the moment remained vivid. She had acted not for recognition but for the safety of others, and yet the acknowledgement of her courage stirred something unfamiliar in her heart. Erin looked toward her and gave a calm smile. "You were remarkable back there," he said. Rilla glanced at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she nodded slightly. "I only did what anyone should have done," she said softly. "But not everyone did," Erin replied. "And that is why it matters." The passengers around them shifted. Some leaned forward, whispering quietly, and a few children waved shyly at Rilla. Her heart stirred at the small gestures. For so long she had been treated as someone to fear, someone to avoid. Now, slowly, that fear was melting into something different. Respect. Recognition. Even gratitude. When the transport's docking lights reflected across the cabin, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "We are approaching the central station. Prepare for disembarkation. All travelers, remain seated until the doors fully open." The hum of the engines began to lower as the ship slowed. Passengers adjusted their belongings and prepared to move. Rilla straightened in her seat. She felt a twinge of anxiety. Even though the cabin now treated her differently, stepping out into the busy station could bring fresh judgment. She had learned over the years to anticipate that reaction. Her people's reputation followed her like a shadow. Erin noticed her hesitation. He reached over and placed a gentle hand on hers. "Whatever happens, I will be here," he said. Rilla looked at him, silver eyes softening. She had expected caution, distance, perhaps judgment. Instead, she found a steady human beside her, someone willing to stand by her side no matter what. That quiet loyalty strengthened her resolve. The cabin doors opened with a soft hiss, and the first passengers began to step onto the station platform. Rilla rose, adjusting her cloak. She moved slowly at first, observing the faces around her. Some travelers gave small nods of acknowledgement, others smiled. None of them averted their eyes, and a few even stepped aside respectfully. Erin stayed close, walking beside her. He did not speak, but his calm presence steadied her. Together, they moved through the bustling crowd. The station was vast, filled with travelers from countless worlds. Ships arrived and departed continuously, and the scent of various foods, the hum of machinery, and the chatter of voices created a lively, chaotic symphony. Despite the busy scene, Rilla felt a sense of quiet pride. The fear that had once surrounded her seemed smaller now. Her courage during the hull breach had shifted how others perceived her. She realized that respect was not demanded. It was earned through actions. A group of passengers passed by, their eyes lingering on her. One young human man nodded respectfully. A woman from a distant planet gave her a faint smile, and a child waved, giggling. Rila returned the gestures cautiously at first, then with more ease. She felt lighter than she had in years. Aaron guided her through the crowd, keeping a steady pace. He did not rush, nor did he shield her unnecessarily. Instead, he walked beside her as a friend, equal and calm. This simple act, ordinary in appearance, held extraordinary significance for Rila. For years, she had moved through space like a shadow, invisible or feared. Now, she was recognized as a traveler, as someone who belonged. They reached a wide corridor that led toward the station's main concourse. Traders, travelers, and officials moved in all directions, each focused on their destination. Rila's gaze swept over the crowd. She saw a man struggling to carry a large container. Without thinking, she stepped forward and helped him steady it. The man blinked in surprise and offered a small bow. "Thank you," he said. She nodded politely and moved on. The small act reinforced what she had begun to understand: kindness and courage could reshape perception. Her people's past would always exist, but she did not have to be defined solely by it. Aaron walked beside her, his expression calm. "You handled that well," he said. Rila looked at him. "It is easy when you see someone in need," she replied. As they continued, they passed a transport terminal where another child had dropped a toy, its small wheels rolling across the floor. Rila bent down and picked it up, handing it back to the child. The child clapped their hands and beamed, calling out a cheerful thank you. Aaron smiled. "You have a way with people," he said. Rila shook her head, though a small smile touched her lips. "I am only learning," she admitted. The crowd shifted as the transport doors opened for more arrivals. Travelers jostled for space, yet none moved unkindly toward Rila. Instead, there was an unspoken understanding. She had earned a new place among them not because of her appearance, but because of her actions. Her courage and willingness to help had created space for respect. They reached the station's main concourse, a massive area filled with light, sound, and movement. Screens displayed arrivals and departures, while merchants sold food, trinkets, and supplies. Rila inhaled slowly, taking in the bustling energy. For the first time in years, she did not feel out of place. A group of travelers paused near her, watching quietly. One of them, an older human woman, stepped forward. "You are the alien who helped on the ship," she said softly. "Thank you. I was afraid, but you saved us." Rila nodded politely. "I only did what I could." The woman smiled warmly. "You did more than that. You changed how we see your people. Not all of them may be like you, but now we know fear is not the whole story." Rila's heart lifted. For years, she had moved through life expecting judgment, expecting distance, expecting fear. And now, recognition and gratitude greeted her instead. Aaron walked beside her, sensing her relief. "See what I told you, it begins with small acts, small choices. You cannot control what everyone thinks, but you can control what you do." Rila looked at him, silver eyes gleaming with appreciation. "I am glad you sat beside me," she said softly. He smiled. "I never doubted it." Together, they moved through the station, finding a place to rest and plan their next steps. Travelers came and went, but Rila felt no pressure, no need to hide. She had earned her space in this world, and she intended to continue proving through action and kindness, that her people were more than fear. As the day passed, she interacted with more passengers, helping with small tasks, guiding those who seemed lost, and speaking kindly when asked questions. Each act built her reputation slowly but surely. Children came closer without fear, travelers nodded respectfully, and even the station officials who observed her interactions gave subtle approval. Aaron stayed by her side the entire time. His presence was constant, not overwhelming, not demanding. He simply stood with her, letting her know she had an ally in this vast station filled with strangers. By the time evening came, the station lights shifted to a softer glow. Travelers began to gather for the night, and the chaos of the day quieted. Rila sat on a bench, watching the activity around her. People passed, some glancing her way with curiosity, others smiling in recognition. Aaron sat beside her, still calm and steady. "You've come far in one day," he said. She nodded, a faint smile curving her lips. "I have. And it feels right." He looked at her. "It is right. You earned it? All of it? Every moment, every choice, every act of courage and kindness. You are not defined by fear. You are defined by what you do." Rila's silver eyes shone with emotion. For the first time, she truly believed it. And as she looked around the station, seeing travelers moving without suspicion, seeing children laugh and wave, seeing respect in the eyes of strangers, she knew she had found something she had long sought. A place where she could exist as herself. A place where her actions mattered more than the shadow of her people's past. With Aaron beside her, she felt a quiet strength. Together, they had faced fear and uncertainty, and together, they had proven that courage, kindness, and simple choices could reshape the world. Rila leaned back, letting the station's energy wash over her. She was no longer an outcast. She was a traveler, a helper, and a woman who had earned her seat in the galaxy. And she would continue to earn it, one act at a time.